Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number BB5002 545N 630. This is a full mortise hinge, and we're going to take a closer look at it. I have one removed from the packaging here. That's what it looks like. And we're going to dissect the part number. Okay, BB5002. Let's take a closer look at what this part number means. So BB stands for ball bearing. In the world of hinges, when it's a standard weight hinge, there would be two bearing packets. From Bomber, the 5000 means that it is, well, the 5000 series means that it is a full mortise hinge. Okay, you can see when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame, and that's a result of the swag that's been put on the hinge leaf, the bend. That's literally right here and here. Okay, so the BB stands for ball bearing. The 5002 means full mortise. The 2 in the part number means that it's made of stainless steel. This is a solid stainless steel hinge. Obviously quite appropriate for exterior applications where you want, the highest corrosion resistance that you can really, reasonably get your hands on. Also means it's 5 knuckle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So all of that conspires to mean ball bearing, full mortise, 5 knuckle hinge. Standard weight is also inferred there as well. The 2 would be a different number if it was a heavyweight hinge. So in this hinge, which happens to be 5 inch tall, the thickness of a standard weight hinge would be 140 thousandths, and my caliper is telling me 141 thousandths. So also in the BB5002 is the weight of the hinge. It's 140 thousandths. Okay. Now the 545, that means that the hinge is 5 inch tall and 4.5 inch wide. Okay. Now, where would you use such a hinge? Well, lots of places. First of all, the height is the first dimension in the hinge. That is simply how it is. It's the opposite as to how doors run. A door would be the width and then the height. Well, the hinge is the height and then the width. And I don't know exactly why that is the case, but it does strike me when you're thinking of doors, what's the more important of the two dimensions? Or, not more important, but what's the dimension that I would like for you to tell me first? Well, tell me the width. Okay, it's a 7-foot door. Great. Tell me the width. That's what I want to know first. When it comes to hinges, I think that same logic applies as well, where the height of the hinge tells me a lot more about the potential type of door that you're hanging. So in a 5-inch style hinge, a 5-inch tall hinge, I should say, it's very likely that you are hanging a door that is, it's either 1 3/4 or 2 inch or 2 1/4, a thicker 1 3/4 or maybe a little bit thicker. Knowing the door thickness will help me hone in on exactly what it is that we're dealing with here as well. The second dimension, the 4.5 inch, in my opinion, it's obviously as important, but in the order of how I would like to know that, say that second. Now, when it comes to the confluence of the height and the width, that really conspires to tell us more about the door. In this sort of case, when you've got a 4.5 inch wide or maybe a 4 inch wide, you're probably dealing with an 1 3/4 thick door that is wider or maybe slightly heavier than standard. The reason I say that is because of the 5 inch width. A standard hinge is 4.5 by 4.5. When you go to a 5 by 4.5, probably what is happening is you have a door that's either heavier or it's wider, or both. On this particular job, we have 2'4" doors. There are 2 of them, but they're going to be exceptionally heavy. Low frequency use, but they'll be heavier than standard. I like to use a taller hinge because it really helps carry the load of the door from the frame, and it's the height that does that work. It's known that the top hinge carries about 70% of the weight of the door, so having a taller hinge at the top, I understand it's about 20% more effective at carrying the weight of the door. So I opted for a taller hinge on this project because of the weight of the door, even though they're quite small. They're quite narrow. They're only 28 inch. Yeah, whatever. They're about 28 inch. Because it would really, in my opinion, be not best practice or best serving the client to have a door that exceeds some parameter. It's exceeding the parameter of weight. This is a particular type of core of door. So increasing the capacity of the hinge would be in alignment. Sure, you could argue what hinge to really use or what pivot to use, but in this case we're going with butt hinges, and because it's heavier, a little taller hinge. Now the width of the hinge is definitely something that needs to get thought about as well. The standard hinge is 4.5, 4.5, but in terms of the width, is the 4.5 inch the width that you actually require? The answer is probably not. Maybe it's perfect. Maybe it's just incorrect, or maybe it's, could be better. What I mean to say with that all is you want the vertical axis of pivoting to be as close to the center of the thickness of the door as possible. The further away you get from that, the less efficient the hinge will be at carrying the weight of the door. So, if you think of in your mind's eye a door that would be installed in a frame and that frame wraps over the wall, well, your hinge barrel is going to stand proud of the face of the frame, and if there was no conflict or obstacle, that door would literally come all the way out and around and go parallel to the face of the wall. It'll open to 180 degrees. The point is, where do you really need that vertical axis of pivoting to be? Can you bring it closer in? In this application, we couldn't because there was a bit of a clearance issue, a very slight clearance issue to contend with. But if I was wrapping that wall, I would have ordered a 5x4 inch hinge because it brings that vertical axis of pivoting closer into the center of the thickness. So be mindful of that. And how you calculate the width of the hinge, and you should always run the calculation whenever you're doing a door and frame project. You should always run the calculation, and here's the formula. It's the door width times, it's the door width minus the hinge back set. And the hinge back set is the portion of the door that's not been mortised for the hinge. So if my door is 1 3/4 wide, my hinge is going to occupy part of that, and the distance between the edge of the hinge here and my thumb, that unchiseled or unmortised or unprepped portion, that's the back set. It's generally 1/4 inch. If it's not 1/4 inch, it's quite close to that. So door thickness minus the hinge back set times 2. So if you follow along, 1 3/4 minus 1/4 inch times 2 is 3 inch. Plus your inset, which is the dimension from the face of the door to the face of the frame. That door is probably moved in ever so slightly. It could be flush, or it could be inset slightly, like literally about 3/32 of an inch. It could be inset several inches. Who knows? But you add that dimension. So 3 inch plus your inset. In our case, it's about 3/32, so it's quite negligible. And then you add your clearance, which is going to be the distance from the face, to the door when it's in the 180 degree position. How much room do you need to allow there? My job required 1 inch of clearance or something like that, and the textbook says go to the next wider available size. So I was at 3 inch plus my inset of 3/32, just over 3 inch, plus 1 inch. So now I'm at 4 and 3/32. Technically, I'm at a 4.5 inch hinge. Would a 4 inch hinge work? Probably, but the textbook says 4.5 inch. The point of the matter is, it's not a 5x5. Okay. The point of the matter is the formula was run to determine what's the industry accepted definition of the right width, and that's how we arrived at a 5 by 4.5. Now the N in the part number means non-removable pin. This client is literally refitting the cab that would go onto a crane. So where the operator sits on the crane, the cab structure, this company, this client of ours, refits those cabs. This door will swing out. So we want to be able to have a security pin option to prevent that pin from being easily driven out. And from the outside, you cannot gain access to that set screw. Okay, only when the door is open could you gain access to that. And I don't recall the size of that Allen wrench that drives that. It's quite small. Don't quote me, but 3/32 of an inch. you know, plus or minus. I don't know. It's quite small. When that set screw is set, it will all but prevent that pin from being driven out. You can loosen that and drive the pin out. And when I hang doors, I would separate the two leaves and then tap the pin down and then tighten my set screw. But I've tried to drive pins out with that, and while it's probably possible to do it, you're going to destroy something. Something's going to be destroyed beyond use. So in an exterior door that swings out, or any door where you want the pins to all but assuredly not be driven out, you want a security feature to it. Moving through the part number further, 630, that means two things. We demonstrated that it's made of stainless and that it has a brushed finish. This is the absolute most durable of all finishes. It's called a natural finish, where you take the base material itself and then you just polish it or brush it. In this case, it's just lightly brushed. The most durable of all finishes. This is the client has basically said this is an extreme high temperature environment, a high humidity environment. You know, there you go. So stainless steel would be the call for the base material, and then a brushed finish. And 630 tells us both of those things. Okay. Now let's switch to the screen view and take a look at some supporting documentation. Okay, so this is indeed the hinge that we're looking at. For medium weight, average frequency doors, yeah, I mean, with a 5-inch, you get to push that boundary a little bit. They say that it's 146 thousandths. I'm pretty sure it's 140 thousandths. There's that link below this video to the cut sheet, which I just clicked on, and it does tell us 146. So when I said 140, I was wrong. This is 146 thousandths. But there you go. So that my caliper told me 141 thousandths. Ball bearing, 5 knuckle. Now it says template here. Template, what does that mean? Well, this cut sheet, we could also call it a template because it shows us the location of the screw holes in the hinge. Gives us all the dimensional locations. These locations on this document that we could call a template is also called the template pattern. So if any hinge that you're dealing with for the height of the hinge is to the template pattern, it will match this universal location, meaning it's 0.508, it's 0.125, 0.1484, etc., 0.375, and then 1 inch. So every 5-inch hinge made to template pattern will match these exact locations, which means you can buy your frame from the Acme company and you can buy your hinge from the widget company. And as long as they're making everything to template pattern, it's compatible. So that's what the word template there means. It's to the template pattern. Button, tip, pin, and plug. Indeed, if you use your imagination, the tip on the hinge looks like the button on your coat. So it's a button tip. Some options that are listed down here. Decorative tips, security tips. A hospital tip would be typical. I think actually what would be of better use would be to hop into the product catalog and dissect some of these options a little bit better. You can order radiused corners on these. It's not unheard of where you have a client who needs a large, heavy hinge with a radiused corner. I did some 6x5 for a client one time with a 5/8 radius, or it was an unusual hinge, maybe 5 by whatever it was, but he needed a heavyweight hinge that was radius corner, 5/8 radius in fact, and that can be done. So the link here to the manufacturer's page, that's going to allow you to pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell by means of this navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog. And in that product catalog, we'll have the how to order matrix. So let's pull up the product catalog. We'll scroll through a little bit, and we'll see the how to order matrix here. After the table of contents, and then some encyclopedic information. So here we are. We're dealing with a ball bearing hinge, 5002, standard weight stainless. You can see how those options change. 545. We did an N for non-removable pin. Then we did a 630 for stainless. But this chart is really helpful because you can immediately see, okay, well, You know what, Rich, I do want that hinge, but I want heavyweight. All right, we'll make it a BB5006. It's right there for your review. Okay. Now, in that catalog where we just scrolled past to get to the how to order matrix, I would like to draw your attention to, here is the determining hinge width formula, and it's basically what we said earlier. Okay, so you can review that. A chart to help you determine hinge width. So if all you know is the maximum clearance that you need to account for here, this chart will make easy work of the math. You know, we needed 1 inch clearance, but we had our inset, so we opted for the next wider hinge. And that formula is there. Every good hinge manufacturer's catalog will have encyclopedic knowledge in it. Bommer is no exception, and you'll want to review that if you deal with hinges more often than not. A standard full mortise hinge with that bend on the hinge leaf, the swag, will look like this. Handing chart, cross-reference chart, should you want to be able to go from McKinney to Bommer or, you know, etc. The 5000 series is a 5-knuckle. The 8000 series is a 3-knuckle hinge from Bommer. And you, oh, forgive me. You heard that cough. I apologize. You can do the BB5000, which is the exposed bearings. You can do an LB5000, which is a lube bearing, concealed bearing construction. People like the LB5000 because it's just cleaner looking. If you want a 3-knuckle hinge, it will be lube bearing exclusively. They don't make a 3-knuckle version of the BB hinge. So you want a real clean look, it'll give you 3-knuckle and lube bearing. Okay, hinge types: full mortise, half mortise, full surface, half surface, wide throw, swing clear, and anchor hinge, raised barrel, slip-in hinges. These are great definitions to review when it comes to different types of hinges and how they're used. We're dealing, of course, here just with full mortise. The security options I had mentioned just earlier: non-removable pin. You can read the definition. If you wanted to up that ante, you could go with a security stud, and that's basically a disc that's maybe a 1/4 inch thick that is attached to one leaf, and in the opposite leaf, at the opposite location, there is a hole in that leaf so that when the door closes, that thick disc resides within the space of that hole, preventing you from slipping those hinge leaves apart when the door's in the closed position. Some people will very often do the A option, which is both NRP and security stud. Very common in airports. You're going to see that all the time. Maximum security stud is where those discs go back into the frame. There was they called it a security tip, hospital tip. That is this, where they grind that tip down so that you can't hang something over the barrel of the hinge. Think of it as being ligature resistant. Decorative tips are here: ball, acorn, and steeple. There are other tips that exist in the world, like urn and square tips, things of that nature, but that's what Bommer offers in addition to the button tip. Here's our how to order matrix. And then you get into the part of the catalog, the business end of the catalog. So we're dealing with this BB5002 right here, and this would be our cut sheet right here. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Okay, so first of all, I apologize for clearing my throat earlier. I did so unnecessarily. So this is your hinge. What else is in the box? And the hinges are priced and sold per hinge. If you buy one, we're going to send you one. This hinge happens to be packed 3 in a box. It has nothing to do with how they're priced. Bomber will include cardboard shims. Okay, perforated pieces of cardboard that will allow you to help move that door in the opening. Cant it in or out, move one end over to account for maybe a frame that's not quite true, plumb, level, and square. Okay, not everyone includes cardboard shims. Cardboard shims are very handy to do that project. So is anything that's like cardboard, except don't use it on a fire-rated door. You can't use cardboard shims on fire-rated doors. You can use steel shims, though, and that's what it'll look like in the box. You're also going to get fasteners. This will include all machine screws. I should say this does include all machine screws and all wood screws. By all means, specify the fasteners that you would like Bommer to pack with the hardware. It's not always, in my opinion, what's logical to me on a hinge in terms of what fasteners I would guess you need is not always logical to the factory or to anyone else. If it was 5x4.5, I am definitely thinking a metal door and a metal frame. If it's 6x6, I am not thinking anything but wood by wood. Okay. If it's 4x3.5, wood by wood probably. If it's 4x4, that could be steel, that could be wood. The bottom line is you don't want to get your hinges and then you're on the job on a Saturday morning and you realize they've sent me all machine screws. This is wood by wood. Clarify that. Put that in the comment field so there's no reason for you to get the incorrect screws, because getting stainless steel 1224 thread forming flat undercut head Phillips drive 1/2 inch long on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock that's a tall order. So just clarify it. Don't take for granted that all of them are in this box. I don't know that that's their standard. It doesn't indicate that on the cut sheet. But specifying to them puts the onus on the manufacturer just to simply package that material accurately for you, because when the installer's at the job, he should have paperwork that tells him what to do. But if he's got options of pieces in the box, maybe he doesn't pick the right option. Obviously, you can't really get a... I have seen wood screws in hollow metal frames. And what was funny about that, they made them so long that they could go through the frame into their studs. So they screwed the hinge through the hinge plate and then into the wood stud behind. Last thing I'd like to point out to you was the Bommer logo. Right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Bommer has been a business since about 1876. The owner of Bommer is the husband of the granddaughter of one of the two brothers Bommer. So a fun fact there for you. I've been to both Bommer facilities. One is their plating facility. The other is the manufacturing plant. Another fun fact about Bommer, from their plating facility, their facility is so clean that the waste that they eject from the plating facility is cleaner than the municipal water supply. Their municipal water supply is completely normal, healthy drinking water. What Bommer ejects is cleaner than that. And that's another fact that Bommer is quite proud of. Any questions on the BB5002 545N and a 630 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.